자, 우선 덤벨을 들고요. 양발을 넓게 벌려서 서주시고요. 그 다음에 스쿼트 동작을 합니다. 하나, 그 다음에 양손을 최대한 들고 여기를 대쪽에 가지고 최대한 당겨줍니다. 그 다음에 이거를 최대한 당겨주셔요. 셋, 네, 이렇게 꾹 당기고 저 같은 경우는 20번을 3세트씩 합니다. 이렇게 한 번, 두 번, 세 번 이렇게 20개씩 3세트를 해줍니다. 이거와 진짜 다리 묶어주고요. 등 라인이라든지 허리 이런 거에 되게 도움이 되더라고요. 전 아직 더 많이 해야 돼요. 한지 얼마 안 돼서 더 열심히 하겠습니다.
And welcome back to the Private Cloud Jumpstart, creating and managing a private cloud with System Center 2012. I'm Simon Perryman, Microsoft Technical Evangelist covering private cloud technologies, and I'm joined in this next module with Adam Hall. And we're going to be covering application management. Adam, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks Simon. So my name is Adam Hall. I am a Product Marketing Manager in the Windows Server and System Center Marketing Group. My role is to look after the application management scenarios of the private cloud. So everything to do with how we configure and deploy applications across both the private cloud and reaching out to the Windows Azure public cloud as well.
Great. So let's take a look at where we are in the agenda. So up to this point, we've given the overview, we've covered the infrastructure, so how we actually deploy the hardware, how we optimize that hardware for the private cloud. Sean came along and he spoke about service delivery and automation as far as how can we streamline and automate and standardize our IT processes. And now Adam's going to come along and he's going to talk about how we really enhance this and provide the best experience for our end user. And in this case, our end user is our application owner or application developer. So why don't you tell us a little more details about what we're covering in this module?
Sure. So throughout this presentation, we're going to do some slides and some demonstration around, we're going to start with the application delivery lifecycle. And so we're going to take a look at how we construct applications in a private cloud and how they're slightly different to how we do applications today. We're going to talk about scalability of applications, how we do application virtualization, and take a look at how we have a standardized approach to deploying applications across both the private cloud and the public cloud. Then a very critical part of the private cloud is availability and performance-driven SLAs. So we're going to take a look at how we do application performance monitoring and how we enable that and make it really easy to get that SLA-driven application monitoring inside System Center 2012 and across our private cloud. Okay, so I believe we've probably covered this a couple of times through the sessions today, but the System Center 2012, our cloud and data center management scenarios are really pivoting around three buckets. We're going to cover in this session the predictable application space. We're going to talk about the application monitoring and diagnosis, the application manageability, and the very service-centric approach to how we do applications in a private cloud. As I mentioned before, I'm also going to cover a little bit about Windows Azure and how we enable that as well. So the flexibility and the delegation. Kenan would have set up the private cloud this morning. We talked about user roles and delegation. Sean was talking about self-service and how people can do basic deployment of both applications and infrastructure. And I'm going to show how we enable the application owner to do that in a self-service style, how they can operate their applications within the private cloud in that delegated model without the need to go back to IT and ask every single time. Now what that means is we need a delegation model, but we need a way of having control as well. And we use the term delegation with control. That ability for IT to delegate out to the application owner to manage their application, but know that they're going to only be able to operate within the bounds that they are delegated to, and they're not going to get out of control and take over someone else's resources and kind of crash the whole environment, right? So I'm going to show you how we set all of that up.
So at a high level, we've continued to get questions about how do we isolate components, how do we, silo different owners, different application developers, even in like a hosted environment, for example. So what's the primary isolation model that we are going to be using here?
Okay, so isolation and abstraction happens at a couple of different layers. We abstract at the hardware up to the operating system level with the virtualization. We have the private cloud abstraction of all the resources into buckets and pools, and I might delegate down to you the ability to deploy 10 virtual machines as an easy example. You get to 10 virtual machines, it's not going to let you deploy an 11th one. At an application level, we have this construct called a service template, which Ken set up this morning, and that ability for us to deploy applications in the exact same way at the same time.
Standardized, consistent, automated.
Absolutely. And within that abstraction of a service template, we have server at V. And so at the application level, we can now abstract the application away from the operating system. And all of these levels of abstraction on the way up give us more flexibility, more control, and allow us to set up applications so that they work the same way every time. If I install an application manually, I have to hit next, I need to configure things, I might miss a step, I take a coffee break, maybe someone goes on leave. With a virtualization package, I say deploy that application. It will go out the same way every time. It will ensure that documentation is updated. It will ensure that the CMDB has been populated through the automated processes. So it's really about all of that coming together, and this application space is about the net result of everything you've seen today from Kenan and Sean. This is how it lights up once you've done all of those things.
Excellent.
Okay. So delivering IT as a service, again, we're going to set up a little bit of self-service from an application owner point of view. We're going to take a look at what that looks like and where all of that work that Kenan and Sean did around configuring and deploying your private cloud, setting up all of that monitoring and operating, the automation that Sean talked about, all of those underlying infrastructure and abstraction components coming together. Now we're going to show you what that looks like from the application owner point of view and how I can really be able to manage my applications in my own way. Okay, so when we talk about applications, the scalable, standardized applications, there's 4 things that we talk about. The first one is abstraction. We just talked about server at V and the way that we can take an application installation, put it inside a bubble, and then make that bubble available as an application for installation. For those of you that have worked in the desktop management world and have used the desktop app V product that's part of the desktop optimization pack, this is the server variant of that same application. You sequence an application, it captures all of the information about the application, the state and the configuration, and allows us to deploy that out in a consistent way. Now, the other thing that Server at V allows us to do is to do updating of applications in a very image-based way. So the ability to lift an application up, replace an underlying operating system, and then put the application back down changes the patch management paradigm a lot and enables us to really be dynamic about how we do on-demand configuration of applications at the same time. Consistency. Kenan set up service templates, and service templates has a very create-consume model. Kenan's world, the IT world, and VMM, Virtual Machine Manager, creating those service templates, populating them, doing their testing, and then moving forward to an application owner, being delegated out the ability to now pick that service template out and consume it and deploy an application out. I will only get prompted for the information required to deploy that application at runtime. The rest of it is all going to be done exactly as was configured at the back end. Insight, we're going to take a look at application performance monitoring and how we make it really easy with Operations Manager to discover applications, to be able to configure them for performance monitoring with a very simple wizard-driven approach, and then be able to do dashboards and get insight into how you're performing against your service levels. And then that control, we're going to take a look at App Controller and show how we can have visibility of quota across both private and public clouds, how we can see what we have running and how we can operate within a delegated model and do things like manage the underlying virtual machines of an application without having any understanding of where they're running, what their names are, their IP addresses and that kind of thing. As an application owner, I don't know what's underneath the hood. I don't know what virtual machines are there.
Well, the bigger question, should you care as the application owner? Do you really care what server it's on, what IP address it's using? I mean, in some cases you do, but ultimately our goal here is to really abstract that, right?
Absolutely, and that's exactly what we try to do. I may need to be able to log onto my app server for some reason, but I don't know its name, I don't know its IP address. We expose that information with a very simple Silverlight console. So we're going to take a look at that as well today. The application delivery lifecycle in a private cloud is a little bit different, and we move to a very simplistic model. We have the application specification. This is what is the application, what are the resource requirements, what are the operating systems that it supports, what are the database configurations, what's the runtime configuration, all of that information coming together. Now, an application specification gets really enabled in a service template. And the difference between an application and a service is that a service is everything about the application in terms of all of the information about the installation, but it's also all the configuration as well, the networking, the storage, the compute resources, the on-demand configuration. The application plus all that information comes together to be delivered as a service. Once that service template is created, and this is a very IT-driven kind of model, then we can do customized deployments. And that ability for us to pick up a delegated service template, enter in the on-demand configuration, and simply hit deploy and have it go off and do all of that work without me needing to know where is it at, where is the status at, it hasn't been done correctly, it's all done for me, and I can see where that's at all times. As we deploy the service out, we can monitor that. We can see how it gets added into all the routines. We're going to see how, when we deploy a service, it gets lit up in things like Operations Manager. As you deploy a service out, it is dynamically configured as a distributed application in Operations Manager. As you deploy, you immediately start to get visibility of the health of the application as it deploys each step. And that will then synchronize around to Service Manager for CMDB, can be added into backup routines, and so forth.
Now, there's actually a question that's come up asking around, can we host multiple apps within a single VM? Well, I mean, generally the best practice is you do want to really isolate applications. If you have 2 apps inside a single VM, that VM crashes, you've lost 2 services at once. There's definitely advantages to just having a single app inside a single VM. But what would your answer be to